Welcome to the first episode of Mom with Issues. I'm your host, resident mom with issues, Alice Rainey. And yeah, as you may have guessed from the title, I've got issues, a whole slew of them. And I'm thinking if you're here, you may have a few issues too. Issues that make being a mom different, harder, and more colorful than the one-dimensional idea of a mom plastered all over social media. So, grab a tasty beverage, a comfy seat, the good chocolate, and let's unpack this stuff. I know I'm not alone. Hey, welcome. So, on our inaugural episode, and in honor of spooky season, we're going to face one of my oldest monsters. This scary son of a bitch stole a lot of peace and calm from me, turned me into a crabby asshole, and still likes to rear his ugly head occasionally. What is it? It's my anger. Or should I say my anxiety? So, which one is it? Is this an episode about anger or anxiety? Well, it's both. I'm an angry, anxious person, and I didn't even know that existed until I read an article about it 5 years ago. I had no idea that anxiety could present as frustration, rage, anger. What I did know was that my anger was an outsized response to the transgression, which would lead me to apologizing to very shocked and sad kiddos, which then led me to sitting in the bathroom crying because I felt like a horrible mother for making them feel that way. Now, before we go too far, I want to stress that I am not a medical professional. I don't even play one on TV. Nothing I say here should be considered medical advice. All my stories are anecdotal. If something I say rings true for you, please discuss it with your medical provider. Do not take medical advice from a strange lady with a podcast in her closet. Cool? All right, now let's jump in. So, how did I find out that I was not just a raging asshole and I was actually just suffering from undiagnosed anxiety? Well, it started after my daughter was born. About 7 months after she was born, we relocated to Tampa, Florida. And despite it being Florida, home to Carol Baskin and every Florida man, I'm a go with the flow sort of person. So I was excited to try someplace new. Fun fact about me, I've lived in 6 different states, 3 coasts, 3 time zones. So I'm no stranger to the stresses of moving. But moving by yourself is one thing. Moving with a 6-month-old, a 3-year-old, that's different. So to say there were some external stressors would be an accurate assessment. Not to mention, we were moving from Georgia, where my husband's family is located, to Florida, where neither of us had a support system in place. I'm going to stop here. Because I had a whole script written out that does not include some factors to why someone would be suffering from anxiety. And they're not the sole purpose, they're not the sole cause, but yeah, they're contributing factors, and leaving them out wouldn't make sense. It would be easier and way less messy. But it wouldn't be true. And if I'm trying to foster a community of women who trust each other enough to be vulnerable and say the hard stuff out loud and do it without judgment, then I should be willing to say some hard stuff out loud. I can't tell the story of my anxiety without providing some additional context. And the previous script I wrote Essentially, yada, yada, yada over two major contributing factors. And I told myself that for brevity and clarity, that it made sense to leave it out. But that's not true. But the truth is that saying it out loud makes it real. Saying it aloud means that everyone will know, and that the quiet battles that you fight on your own, that you feel like you need to fight on your own, is why we're here, right? To not feel so alone. So, I'm going to lead by example here. I'm looking for a community of moms who want a safe place to address their issues, to speak up without fear and judgment so that they can feel a little less alone. So here I am, offering that space and hoping that you'll sit here with me. So, now that we got that out of the way, I'm trusting you. And here's your trigger warning for trauma. The next bit talks about domestic violence, murder, suicide, and addiction. Now, I'm not going to go into depth here. It's just for context. So if you're not in a place to hear that right now, I understand. Skip forward a little bit to get to the other side of this. I promise it's just for context. Future episodes will address these issues more in depth. But for now, go ahead, skip ahead, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey, besties. If you stuck around, thanks. So, here's the quiet part. When I was 17 years old, I lost both of my parents. My father, who was suffering from both Parkinson's and dementia at the time, murdered my mom and committed suicide in the family home 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. And for reference, I am an elder millennial, which means I turned 17 in 2001, 6 months before 9/11. So, you know, classic millennial trauma plus my own personal trauma for a little spice. And no, don't worry, I'm not going to unpack all of the details of that now. That's a trauma rabbit hole that deserves its own episode. And quite frankly, it would totally derail this. But just know that, yeah, bad things happened and probably contributes to my anxiety in some way. Yeah? Now, I know that's a lot to digest. Trust me, I know. So we can sit with that for a moment. And just a reminder, I told y'all I was going to leave this out. Should I have left this out? Let me know on the Discord server. Anywho, where was I? Oh, yeah, we had just made space to deal with my orphan face before I dropped the next trauma bomb on you. So, on top of my already traumatized brain, moving out of state with no support network, let's throw an alcoholic husband in the mix for fun, as a little treat. And no, I'm not attributing my anger and anxiety solely to that. But yeah, not knowing what version of your husband is going to show up when you have 2 small children and 0 family and 0 friends who knew the reality of what was going on, it's going to cause some feelings, and justifiably so. Now, I want to be fair to the friends that I did have there, because I know they're listening to this, but also because it's right, it's accurate. They supported me in the best way they knew how, but they could only support what they saw, what they knew. And being married to an alcoholic, there's a lot that your friends just don't know. And I hope that that's why at least some of you are here today, to feel a little less alone. And again, I'm not going to dive into this. This is a very deep pool, and we are sticking to the shallows today. But we all know that this is an issue that definitely deserves its own time. And I want to fully address how life with someone in active addiction impacts the type of mom that I was, that I am, because it's a lot, and I know that I'm not alone there. Now, I know that was a tangent, but it felt necessary, so thanks for sticking with me. Now that we've got that out of the way, here I am in Florida with two small kiddos, no local support system, an unstable home situation, my own personal trauma, and oh yeah, I forgot I was also attending school full time and working full time at this time. Say time one more time, Alice. Time. So, um, yeah, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. It's enough to make anyone feel all of the things. So, being angry and short and snappy, the constant feeling of being overwhelmed, chronically tired, it all seemed justified. If I looked at my life, I saw plenty of reasons to be angry and grouchy and snappy. But what I didn't see was a reason for me to be so incredibly angry all the time. Let me explain. Something minor would happen. Say, Target is out of paper towels. Now, this is a minor inconvenience. This is first world problems all the way. And it's especially a minor inconvenience because at the time, there's a Walmart right across the street. Now, I would get mad. Big mad. Rage-inducing mad. Furious even. Over this minor inconvenience. Now, rest assured, I did not have a Karen-sized temper tantrum in the store. I am still an adult in charge of my body, and I'm not going to kick and scream and flail because someone's out of paper towels. And despite feeling like I would hulk out and rage out at the absolute smallest things, I did a fair amount of internal seething and a whole lot of screaming in the car and a crap ton of crying on the bathroom floor. And I knew after every outburst that the response didn't match the situation. I knew that on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being an eye roll and a shrug, and 10 being gritted teeth, bulging veins, and a reddened face, I was at a 15. And there was no slow build. It wasn't like a series of small inconveniences would lead to my inevitable eruption. No. Every single disruption would send me into a full rage spiral. And being that angry all the time takes a physical toll. Persistent migraines, a full body ache, constant tiredness. I just felt like I had the flu all of the time. And again, I told myself that all these aches were justified. My life, after all, was stressful. And when you're in the thick of it, you can't see it. Feeling crummy every day becomes your new normal. When one day is running into another, you can't tell that you've had the same migraine day in and out for over a week. You don't even realize how everything you say sounds just a little bit annoyed. When your default response becomes, "What?" and you can't remember why you were so annoyed to begin with. Now, even though I avoid public meltdowns, I'm not going to pretend like I was always able to control my anger. No. More often than I would care to admit, I snapped at my kids. I ignored my friends' phone calls and canceled plans, and I always apologized. But it didn't make it better. And even now, it makes me sad to know that my kids have memories of mom being the absolute worst. Now, I will happily tell anyone that one bad day doesn't make you a bad mom. And I believe that. But dealing with untreated anxiety meant that it wasn't just one bad day. It was one bad day, followed by another bad day, and another, and another, and another. And I was tired. I was so tired of being the angry mom. I'm not an angry person. I'm very much a go with the flow, to each his own, not my circus, not my monkeys type of person. So I tried all the things. We got a dog. I joined a gym. I got a trainer. I did bar and yoga and spin classes. I'm still paying for that Headspace subscription. I tried intermittent fasting, bullet journaling, self dates, self care in all the forms, all the things. And yeah, each one provided tiny little dopamine bumps that improved my overall quality of life, but nothing stopped the snapping, that short jump to rage. But then one day I was reading a parenting magazine and I came across an article. It was written by a mom who was struggling with her own anger. In the article, she mentioned how she was diagnosed as having GAD, or Generalized Anxiety Disorder. As I read the article, I lost count of the number of similarities between us. The way she described her 0 to 100 feeling, the major life change as a trigger. I searched high and low for that article for today's episode, and I haven't seen that exact one. It was over 5 years ago, and that's in pre-pandemic brain storage, and I don't actually have access to that anymore. But I did find two similar articles from Scary Mommy, and I'll link them in my link tree and the comments of this pod for you to check out. But from one of the linked articles, the one titled, "I Thought I Was Turning into a Rage Monster, Then I Was Diagnosed with Anxiety." In that article, the mom says, "Then the youngest won't climb into his car seat, and all of the frustration of the morning builds up and snaps out. 'Why can't you do this right? You're not a baby,' you demand of your all of 3-year-old. His lips tremble, and you just want to cry with him because your anger has nothing to do with him and everything to do with being anxious and overwhelmed." She also says, "I thought, like many of you, that I had suddenly developed an anger problem. I thought, just like you, that I was a terrible person. I also thought I was alone. Who treats their kids like this except bad people? Who feels like this? I had no idea that, like so many moms, my anxiety disorder was manifesting as anger. I wasn't mad. I was actually terrified." And I know that this isn't the exact article that I read, but my gosh, it hits all the exact same notes. And for me to know that this isn't the same article, but for it to have the exact same feeling for me and the exact same sentiments, really does speak to the fact that we're not alone in feeling this way. So I read my article, and then I called my doctor and scheduled an appointment. And I'm lucky. I'm incredibly lucky that I've had the care team that I've had in my life. Because as a Black woman in America, finding a supportive doctor is more of a crapshoot than it should be. But my doctor in Florida could not have been kinder or more receptive to the idea. And I was nervous, y'all. Do you have any idea how scared I was? I mean, what was I scared of? Well, first of all, I was scared she would dismiss me because I'm making an appointment by saying, I read this article. So I was kind of worried that she would think, "Oh, great, what has Dr. Google convinced you of?" But I feel like since I wasn't saying I had cancer and brain cancer and I was going to die immediately, which is what Dr. Google tells everyone, I think it would be okay. um, but mostly I was afraid that if I admitted that I was struggling, that she would question my ability to be a good mom. Hell, I was questioning my ability to be a good mom. And she didn't do either of those things. She confirmed what I had read and said, yeah, anxiety can present as anger in some people. And she told me it was perfectly normal to have anxiety with 2 kids under 5. Then she told me the thing that finally let me breathe a sigh of relief. And this is why I'm so grateful for her and why I say I'm lucky to have had her on my care team. Because she put her hand on my arm and she looked me in the eye and she said, "We're going to get you through this. We have a few options we can try. It's going to be okay." And to this day, her saying, "We are going to get through this," really helps so much. So, she asked me if I had tried any of the previously mentioned lifestyle changes, to which my answer was option E, all of the above. And then she told me there's a couple of anti-anxiety meds we could try. And we settled on trying Lexapro first, which came with the warning that it may make me crave carbs. And yeah, yes, it did. Yes, I craved all the carbs all the time. It was terrible. Absolutely not my favorite side effect. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Now, here's where I'm going to remind you again that I am not a medical professional. This is not medical advice. I am only speaking about my experiences. So please reach out to your healthcare provider if you have questions. So I start taking Lexapro. And when you take happy brain pills, they always tell you that they need time to build up in your system before you see any noticeable, consistent changes. But for me, within the first week, there was a noticeable change. My face felt less tense. I wasn't snapping at anyone. I wasn't rushing around and feeling this weird sense of urgency, like this tension. The tense buzz of the anxiety was gone, and I felt better. I felt more like my old self. I finally felt in control of my emotions again. So, you may be wondering where this is going. I was angry, but not really. I was just anxious. I told my very nice doctor, got some happy brain pills, ate my weight in carbs, stopped yelling at my kids, and we all lived happily ever after, right? Well, not exactly. So I had figured out what was wrong, and I was taking medication for it, and I was definitely a calmer, more present mom for a time. But after a couple of years, something didn't feel right. I couldn't place it at the time. I was still taking my medicine, but I felt awful. I was sad. I was very, very sad. Only I wasn't. I was depressed. And just like I didn't know that I was anxious, I didn't know that my brain was revolting against the medicine and was making me depressed. Back in the far corners of my mind, I remembered my doctor telling me that my antidepressants might make me depressed. She described it as feeling that makes you, I don't know, feel like you want to jump out of your skin. So one day from the bedroom floor, I told my husband, I feel very, very broken. I finally knew what she meant. And the next day, we booked me a grippy sock vacation. Now, I failed to mention that we had moved back to Georgia by this time, so we had a much more robust support network. And my husband, who was sober at the time, really came through. The idea of navigating that time fully alone is truly terrifying. Him and my in laws were super supportive. As you can imagine, this depression was no joke. She kicked my ass. I even had to walk away from a job that I enjoyed and a brand new promotion because my depression was so debilitating. It was bad. So that grippy sock vacay was definitely warranted. Not only did it give me some much needed time to focus solely on my issues, um, because as a mom, you're focused on you, but like in the back of your brain, you're always still kind of worried and focused on your kiddos. So even finding the mental time to focus on what's bothering you can feel like a struggle. Um, but it got me in touch with a new care team and a new medication, one that does not make me feel like a cookie monster at 2 a.m. tearing through the pantry for carbs. So, hella improvement. Having GAD isn't something that you outgrow. So I'll probably take some type of SSRI for the rest of my life, which means my anxiety is going to have a co-starring role to the character of mom forever. Um, and yeah, some days that makes me sad. Some days I feel like my kiddos are cheated by having a mom with a shorter fuse. But then I remind myself that different doesn't mean worse. Because of my anxiety, I get to practice patience and be more mindful in my responses. Because of my anxiety, me and my kiddos have a secret language. So when mom is getting shouty or yelly, one of the kids will say grapefruit. It's our code word for me to snap out of whatever mood I'm in and to check my tone. This one word does wonders if I'm responding from an anxious place. Now, if I'm genuinely and rightly upset, it's still a cue from my kiddos that this version of mom is scary and I know that my message isn't getting through. So, I'm practicing grace with myself because I know I'm much better than I used to be. And I remind myself daily that one bad day doesn't make me a bad mom. Thanks for sharing space with me today. I know when you're in the thick of it, it can feel like a very lonely place. And seeing the way out is easier with a buddy that's been there before. You're not alone. You never were. The idea that it takes a village was lost along the way. So let's form our own village, a collective of moms with issues, a community of mothers that know that one bad day doesn't make you a bad mom, a group of moms that will cheer you on, lift you up, and help you out. New episodes of Mom with Issues released on Sundays. Until then, join the community on Discord, follow me on TikTok at The Mom with Issues for random laughs, and check out my link tree to be a part of the show. Until next time.